Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Puzzle Piece Media Podcast. I'm your host, Nehemiah Wilson, and this season we are discussing MMA, mixed martial arts, and we're doing putting a spotlight, if you will, on the local MMA scene, specifically Form 7 martial arts and primal combat. And I am here with a young man who just had his first fight and was awarded the submission. Is that the submission of the night?
Yes, sir.
Submission of the night at Primal Combat. Here recently, I'm with Lucas Shoulders. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, we met, I guess, right before the last Primal Combat event. I might have called up with you in the gym a little bit leading up to it, and did a short little interview the night before the fight, and I was doing commentary on the fight. What got you into fighting?
So it really started, I've always been a big UFC fan, just kind of growing up. And then kind of once I got out of college and started working, I was really looking for a way to try to lose some weight. Just overall was in very poor shape. So I started going to a jiu-jitsu class in Hendersonville up there at Legion Checkmat. Kind of from there, just bounced around in different places until I started going to Form 7, and it really stuck there, and I really enjoy working with Tyler. So I was able to kind of go there, and he kind of not talked me into fighting a little bit, but kind of showed me that it was something that I could
nudge you in that direction.
Because my confidence level before that was not, I wouldn't have been able to step out there and to go into a camp and into a fight. So he kind of helped pull that out of me just a little bit, and here we are now.
Yeah.
So still going.
Yeah, so you talked about, wanting to lose some weight. What was your athletic background before that?
Just about nothing. I played 1 year of basketball, and I didn't even have a jersey. So other than that, just a little bit of weightlifting last couple years of high school, but I was coming in pretty fresh to all of it. Very unathletic, couldn't run, couldn't do much of nothing, but we worked our way to where we are now.
Yeah, definitely. So, what was it like just getting into the jiu-jitsu class and starting to roll around just as an exercise?
It was very tough starting off. I remember, going to the gym, and I'd be leaving face just red as a tomato, covered in sweat, and lightheaded, and it was extremely hard on me first off. But every class, and I hear people say, just keep showing up. Every class got easier and easier, and then eventually you can kind of move into some longer classes, and really be able to get a couple hours worth of rolling in throughout a day.
Okay. So for people that don't know, myself included, I took Taekwondo as a kid, but I don't really have a background in martial arts. So explain to me exactly what jiu-jitsu is for those that don't know.
So jiu-jitsu is, the way I like to describe it to people that aren't familiar would be almost just like wrestling, but to a finish, to a submission. So some people call it submission wrestling, submission grappling. So most places you're going to be on the ground. There are no strikes thrown. So there's no punching, no kicking, things like that. And you can either go for chokes, for joint submissions, so you can, grabbing limbs, arms, legs, things like that, or just chokes that we've seen before. But the biggest difference between it and the other disciplines most of the time is just the lack of strikes.
Okay. So how did you enjoy that?
I like it. Just as soon as I started, I really fell in love with it and was able to, once I got past the stage of where I was just going in class to survive, and was able to, kind of find some things that I liked and some things that I could apply, that's when it really started to be fun.
Okay. Was there a light bulb moment for you? You talk about trying to survive at first. What was it that clicked?
Really, once I was able to, and it kind of came whenever I started at Form 7, because some of these other classes that I would go to, and this is nothing against any of these other places, but when I go to Form 7, it's very intimate with Coach Tyler, and he will give you the instruction that you need, and he's able to kind of see the things that you need to work on. So for me, it was, I was a bit too lackadaisical in my role, and, you know, I'd get lazy. So he helped kind of bring out the aggressiveness in me, and that was my light bulb moment, was knowing that there are going to be times where I do need to be aggressive and be the one that's pushing the pace. So that was the biggest thing for me, especially during this camp, was knowing when to attack instead of just kind of laying back and waiting for my moment.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine it's very similar in jiu-jitsu. I know there's no striking, but Mike Tyson famously said, you know, everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the mouth. You know, so I'd imagine there's some of that same thing. It's like, oh, we're gonna roll around, but you know, somebody gets you. You know, somebody gets a hold of you. You're just like, oh, this is serious.
Yeah, it can get very real very quick.
Yeah. So you're at the place in Hendersonville, and then you end up at Form 7. How do we transition to actually getting into the cage? What's that conversation like?
So probably around, if I'm remembering correctly, in March, me and Tyler had discussed fight, and then, you know, he told me just to think on it a little bit and, you know, see what I was wanting to do. So spoke with Coach Tyler, and he found me a matchup. Then you get into your camps, which some do, you know, 6 to 8 weeks. I believe we did an 8 week, if I'm not mistaken. And then throughout that camp, it's working on some things you might like to go for in the fight, and really just trying to iron out as many small details and small mistakes that you can. And you'll slowly begin to push the pace a little bit in camp, and then, you know, towards the end you'll teeter off very hard and kind of relax right before the fight. But in camp, you're really trying to iron out some, at least this was in my camp, and every experience is probably different, but trying to iron out the small things and the small mistakes that you can prevent in the fight, because, you know, once you get in there in the cage, you want to have, you know, the least amount of mistakes possible, because sometimes it's just a bit wild in there, so you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. Like I said, I was lucky enough to do commentary, you know, for the last Primal Combat event, and there was a point, I've got pictures on my Instagram, there was like blood on the table, so
yeah.
I was like, I'm getting blood on me, I'm not even in the fight, so I can imagine what it's like. And, you know, I'm going to ask you, what's it like when that cage door does close, especially the first time walking in there?
It's honestly still a surreal feeling thinking about it now. And I've heard people say before, you don't play fighting, there's just fighting. So once you get in there, you know, it's the guy across from you, he's not going to pull any punches. He's out to hurt you. He wants you to be hurt. That's the name of the game. And that was a big thing for me. Is there's sometimes I'll be a little bit too nice in the gym or things like that, and being able to flip that switch. But once you get in there and the cage doors close, I almost felt a little bit of relief, because you know, I had never cut weight before. All these pre-fight things I've never done before. But then when I finally got in the cage, I was doing something that I was very familiar with.
Yeah, I've done this part. This is the easy part, so to speak. Not necessarily that, you know, fighting's easy, but you know, you mentioned, you know, the weight cuts and all the different things that go into it. Yeah, I can see that being a bit of a relief of this is the part that I got into it for. Now, you knew your opponent going in, like y'all are.
Or we were not, you know, personal friends before, but I like to say now that we are.
Okay. Does that affect your preparation or how you're viewing things when it's somebody that, you know, even if you're not necessarily close friends, that you do have a personal relationship with you? This is not just a random face, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I think, and for me, you know, before the fight, I had no knowledge of him at all. But once we got the fight scheduled, I believe he got in touch with me, and I mean, honestly, just at the time, I was kind of back and forth on, you know, whether or not I wanted to be friendly with him, I guess, just for lack of a better term, because I knew I'd be stepping in the cage with him. But at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and we're all, you know, we're in this whole thing together. So, and I think there's a level of respect that comes with, competitor and a competitor. So I might not be just buddy with somebody before a match, but after the fight, absolutely.
Yeah, that was definitely one thing. I think I said this on commentary that the sportsmanship aspect of it, I think, says a lot about the people that are involved in that.
Yes.
Because me from the outset, I played sports growing up, and I understand sportsmanship and all of this, but I don't think I can shake somebody's hand that was just trying to, break my nose and, choke me out. I'm like, you know what, we'll talk tomorrow, maybe, but right now, stay away from me.
Yeah, it's definitely a different ball game, just because fighting is so, it's just so, you're putting yourself out there in front of everybody and your opponent. After the fight, what kind of camp you've been through, and that your opponent's been through camp as well. So kind of all the work that y'all both have put in come together to put on a good show for everybody, and it feels pretty good afterwards.
Yeah. How much are you consciously thinking during a fight?
Well, during my fight, this was one thing that actually surprised me. My coach told me that, I might be misquoting him a little bit here, but he told me that once I get in there, I'm not going to be able to think of anything. And he was absolutely right, because just about as soon as the bell rang, it was all instinct, good and bad. Like we talked about before, like ironing out small details. Even in the short fight that I had, there was an instance where I dropped my hands as I threw a straight, and my coach would always tell me that you'll fight like you spar, and that is a bad habit that I have during sparring. Is on a certain strike, I like to kind of lean my head to the side, and I'll drop my hands, and that right there just showed me how right he was about the things you do in the gym, and some will call them lazy moments, where maybe if you could be in a better position or your footwork could have been sharper, things like that, especially now after my fight, are what I'm really trying to dial in on, because I did see during that fight that it's completely instinct. And, if you try to think of something, maybe once you're very comfortable in the cage in front of people, you could do something like that, but especially amateurs and kind of starting off, you really want to have all those details and just the simple things just really clear in your mind and be ready to bring them out.
Yeah. I had an old band director. I did marching band in high school, and he always used to bring up the old quote that practice makes perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And he would say, practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent.
Yep.
And that's just, like I said, this is 8th, 9th grade, but that's something that's always stuck with me. And, obviously what you just said, the way you do it in practice over and over, it's the way you're going to do it when it's game time or fight time or performance time or whatever. He always gave the example of a guy who played the xylophone, and he was rehearsing this piece, and he always got to this one part, and shit. And he would do that every time, and he did that during the audition because, he had done it so many times. What's your feeling like when you hear the bell ring, when you hear the ref calling for the fight?
For the fight to be over?
Yeah.
Really just excitement. And in the position that I was in, I was confident. By no means, I knew that I was not, it wasn't over until the ref stepped in. But as soon as he came in there and, put his hands on me, I knew that it was over. And I just instantly started thinking about, my family and all my friends that were kind of over there. I think you had mentioned in the commentary over there towards the side, and all the people that have had to hear me talk about the fight for the past 2 months, and like my girlfriend Kara, she's been an absolute trooper through all of it, through camp, and not being able to hang out as much and do the things that we might usually be able to do. So that was kind of the first thing in my mind, was to show some love to the people that have helped throughout camp and throughout the fight and stuff.
Yeah. So you announced the victor. You're announced as the victor. By submission. Did you put any thought in beforehand of what you wanted to do? Obviously you want to win, but because we're sitting here, we got the submission of the night award on the table. Does any of that cross your mind in camp or leading up to the fight, or I want to, it'd be nice to do this, or you just focused on business?
Well, throughout the camp, I told Tyler that I really did want the submission of the night, and even, we had this in the gym, he would have it out and people looking at it, and I told him that I did not want to touch it until I won it. So we would kind of plan for some things. The original plan for the fight was to just kind of stand up for a little bit. I wanted to try to get some time on the feet, just kind of see where I was stacking up, and making sure, just testing my mettle a little bit, against that level. It didn't end up that way. Got taken down, walked right into it, but during camp, I had really focused on trying to make something happen off the bottom in case I did get taken down, just because I didn't want to get stuck in that position. And in Form 7, we do a very, very large amount of back position drills. So even in the scenario, if I was put in a bad position like a mount or even had my back taken, I felt extremely comfortable with it throughout the camp, doing it against guys that are a whole lot bigger than me and my opponent were. And that was the biggest thing for me when I got in there, is that there wasn't anything that felt unfamiliar. Even, when he had my leg and he was coming down for ground and pound, I felt comfortable in that because Coach Tyler, he put me in that position, many, many times. And Tyler ain't gonna go soft on you either.
Yeah, no, not at all.
And, sometimes during camp that would bother me. And, but now looking at it, if I didn't go through that in camp, I think my nerves during the fight would have been a whole lot worse.
Yeah. Preparation, everything. So, fight night in general. At what point, because you guys weighed in the night before. I know they had a spot set up for you over at the gym, pre-fight and stretching, warming up, anything of that nature. What's your mindset like? At what point, how comfortable are you? When are the nerves starting to set in, as far as, because you're in the main event, so you got 6-7 fights before you that they could last 30 seconds, they could go, to a decision. What's that like of trying to stay in the zone or be in the zone for, you kind of know when it's coming, but not really? What's that like?
So for me, and this was kind of weird because I was way more nervous for weigh-ins and during weigh-ins than I was, throughout the fight. And, I'm not sure if that was just something, like we mentioned before, that because I was unfamiliar with it and things like that. And I still get scared and nervous to go in front of people and do things like that. So it was kind of weird for me to be so nervous the night before. But the day of the fight, I woke up and my cousin Raleigh, he's just about my brother. I'll call him my brother, and he fought as well. So me and him were kind of going through camp together, going through weigh-ins together, and going through fight day together. So just surrounding myself with people that I trust and people that will be able to. Sometimes if I do get a little bit nervous or things like that, and Jerry Pearson over at Form 7, he also kind of helped calm me down and get my mind right. But really, the day of the fight, I was just trying to stay absolutely as calm as possible. And I was nervous and more so anxious kind of earlier in the day, just because I knew there were so many fights before me. So there was a lot of time in between, like pre-fight physicals and then going into my fight. So I just tried to remain calm. I think I even took a nap at some point and was just, able to really just relax. So once the event started, we went in and some of the other Form 7 guys and some of the guys that I know personally, helping them if they needed anything, and any of the other fighters that were at the gym, just, kind of bouncing around and doing what I can. But once it gets to about 4 or 5 fights before, you start getting wrapped up and warming up, things like that. And me, I repeated in my head, chin down and hands up. That was 2 big things for me, was keeping my chin down, because I would like to do this right here during sparring and things like that, and then obviously keeping my hands up. And shadow box and going for the things that we worked on in camp. and really just trying to stay calm. But at the same time, I think on fight day it's good to kind of get your lungs opened up a little bit, and you don't want to just be couch potato for 2 or 3 days before your fight. You still want to be moving like you're used to, and getting your lungs going and your blood flowing and everything. But day of the fight, nerves for me, and it might be different for everybody. It wasn't really that bad until kind of got to the walkout and things like that. Whenever the crowd really gets involved, so the eyes made me probably a little bit more nervous than anything. But once we got in the cage, like we said before, that was about the only thing throughout this whole process that I know.
Yeah.
So I did get a little bit of peace once I kind of stepped in the cage just a little bit.
Did you get a chance to? Were you guys able to sneak over from the gym to the park where the event was being held to kind of see what the crowd looked like, see the lay of the land, or did you have to see it all, on walkout?
There was, so we actually had a TV set up in Form 7 that was streaming the event, and I think there were some that had went over there. Me personally, I think I might have been the only one that did go over there. But I was just trying to stay at the gym, and I was just around my people, so I didn't really go over there. And then by the time Raleigh went out to fight, I was kind of starting to get ready for mine a little bit. So I think there were some that went over there, and we had one of the members at Form 7 was taking us in a vehicle back and forth. So we kind of got to see the crowd, and that was the cool part for me. I got to see all my family and my friends out there, and it really did mean a lot for them to come out there and support me in it.
Yeah. I mean, support goes a long way. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about your family, friends, and how do they feel about it? I mean, from obviously it's one thing, like you said, you started just to sort of exercise and get in shape. I think generally people will be happy about that. Like, oh, he's working out. That's good for him. But then, like, when you decide to make the transition to actual fighting, what's that like with parents, girlfriend, and how do they feel about it?
Yeah, you're exactly right. There's a big difference between just kind of doing it for a fitness aspect and then going into an actual fight. But I think, and what they've said before, is they were able to see, because when I started, I was just about 300 pounds whenever I started doing jiu-jitsu. So they got to see the entire journey of going, still driving, me who hates driving an hour to go, get whooped for an hour and a half. And then, we even had, it was me and another buddy of mine who, they liked jiu-jitsu as well. We would go out in my garage and we didn't have no mats, no nothing. So we took 3 house rugs and laid them out on our concrete garage floor, and that's what we rolled on for, probably 4 or 5 months until we was able to get some mats. So my friends and family, they've seen the process and they've seen the work that I've put in, and it's impossible probably to convince a mom to let you fight.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll ever really be a fan of it. But they've seen what it's done for me, and they've seen what it's done for other people, and just how much I love it. So I think they understand that, and try to get them involved a little bit and things like that. But my girlfriend, she's been great throughout the whole thing, and I talked to her about it before a little bit before camp. I told her that things are going to get pretty slim around here. I ain't gonna be around much. Gym just about every night, Lord willing, unless something major comes up. Throughout the whole thing, she was nothing but just a lot for me to enjoy, and she was definitely my rock throughout the whole thing, because there would be some days where I just wanted to quit or wanted to pull out of the fight and things like that, and she would always tell me, absolutely not, we've started it, so you've got to finish it. So it's definitely a shock for some people, because there's a lot that knew me, or that just at work and things like that have known me for a long time, and I definitely don't strike them as the fighting type, the type to get in there and fight somebody in a cage. But it's what I love. I ain't really just pinned down why exactly, but everybody's seen the amount of effort I put into it, just compared to about anything else I've ever done. Because, you know, honestly, I went through life just kind of half did everything. You know, wasn't really able to find anything that stuck with me until I found, you know, jiu-jitsu and just MMA in general. You know, so I'm just trying to hang on to that for as long as I can. And, you know, having that support around me really does help, especially when it comes around like competition time.
Yeah, definitely support. Were you aware? I know you saw him on the, you know, you got to see him on the live stream, you know, the event. By the time you get out there, are you aware of, you know, where your family and friends are? Can you hear them? You know, because I know, obviously, very different. Like basketball, you know, in high school, I would always look for my mom in the crowd, you know, before you know, a game, and because she worked nights, so it was always a question of whether she was going to be able to come. But she always generally kind of sat in the same place, so I could look for her before the game. Can you do that, or are you too locked in at that point?
I think, and it's probably different for everybody, but whenever I went in there, you know, I was looking at my family throughout the walkout, and, you know, there's a million things running through your mind, a million things, and then nothing at all at the same time, if that makes any sense. And once you get in there, I stepped in, you know, did whatever showmanship I wanted to do whenever I walked in, but then I went and looked at my family, and then right before I spoke with Mr. Thompson, I believe the referee, you know, said a quick prayer, but, you know, I got to see him for just a little bit before, and, you know, that brings you just that little bit of comfort knowing that they're there watching, and you do want to do good and put on a show in front of everybody.
Yeah. You mentioned one of the things we talked about was, you know, the weigh-in and being nervous for that. Just talk about just weight in general. You said you were close to 300 pounds when you started jiu-jitsu. Obviously, you're much less than that. What did you fight at?
I fought at 170. I was about 168.3, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Do you think was that a comfortable weight for you to be at, or where was your weight before you started camp, when you started kind of talking about, okay, we're gonna fight, we got to figure out what weight class and this and that? What's that process like? So
before camp, I was probably walking around at a pretty chubby 190. You know, I had a lot of extra. And before camp started, once I started consistently just going to Form 7, before we had decided to fight, I probably got down to about 185. So at that point, we'd figured, and, you know, 170 would be a relatively easy cut, 15 pounds in 8 weeks. You know, to me, that's not a lot. You know, it wasn't a difficult cut. You just got to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to. So 170 right now, I think, is good for me. Now that we've kind of taken a step back and everything's calmed down a little bit, you know, I could go two directions. I could either, you know, try to bulk up a little bit, put on some muscle and go to a 185, or I believe that I can make the cut to 155. And I would be a very big 155, but I can use that to my advantage. So that's something we're kind of looking at right now, and, you know, not really made a decision on it yet, but either, you know, trying to stay at a bigger 170 or kind of dropping down to 155. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's fascinating to me. Maybe not, you know, I don't know how much at the amateur level it's happening, but to see, like, you know, watching a little UFC, watching a little boxing and stuff like that, you know, to know that people are, you know, weighing in at, you know, like you said, you might try to go down to 155, you know, and fight. Like, you would weigh in at like 154 the day before the fight, and then fight night, you know, 24 hours later, you're back up to 170 or something. It's like, that's, to me, is fascinating how that works. I mean, what goes into just, obviously, not just losing weight, but quote unquote cutting weight?
The biggest thing for me, probably the last 4 weeks of camp, because at the same time, you've got probably your hardest weeks of camp. You know, you're going to get the most reps and you're going to get the hardest reps. At the same time, you have little to no fuel. And, you know, you can some people go a lot harder than others, and me, I wanted to make sure I didn't want to worry about my weight at all. So I was pretty much egg whites and chicken breast for about the last 3 weeks, nothing but water and maybe like sports drink type of deal. But as for actually cutting the weight, we would mix in some high intensity cardio just before any classes that we had. For the actual fight, we didn't do much of a water or a dehydration cut. And I believe, if I understand correctly, that's what a lot of pros will do, because you can lose a good 10 to 15 just off of water, and then you'll rehydrate back up to your normal walking around weight. But most of mine, I believe I weighed 168.3 on the night of the weigh-ins, and then fight night I weighed roughly 172, 173. So it wasn't a big jump, but there was definitely an increase, and I could definitely feel the difference after we weighed in and I got a full meal in me.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of meals, after this long camp, 8-week camp, and weight, and you mentioned egg whites and chicken breasts, what's that first meal that you're looking forward to getting after it's over? I've done it. I can enjoy myself for a little bit.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I ate after my fight was my girlfriend had got me a gift basket, we'll call it. It had all my favorite things in it, and my favorite was Oreos. And that was the thing throughout all camp. I wanted Oreos so bad, and that's what I was craving. So that was the first little snack that I had. But as for my first meal, there's a place in Gallatin called Koi, which is like a hibachi place, and they load you up down there. So I got me probably a couple pounds of rice, a couple pounds of steak, a couple pounds of chicken. So that was my first meal back, and it was very good.
Yeah. You mentioned being a fan of the UFC. Do you have any favorite fighters in particular that you look up to, or?
Yeah, all time, George St. Pierre, like a lot of others, is my favorite. And actually, I got to meet him probably about a year ago at a meet and greet in Nashville. As for current day fighters, I really do like Charles Oliveira. Him kind of mixing in his jiu-jitsu and using that as a defense sometimes when he gets into trouble. Rafael Fiziev is another one, really kind of heavy hitter Muay Thai guy, really sharp with his technique. So Oliveira and Fiziev are two guys that I'm a very big fan of. And I'd love to be able to fight like them someday, but we got a long way to go.
Got to take baby steps. So what's next for Lucas Shoulders?
Right now, like I said, kind of taking a step back and relaxing a little bit, and really been focusing on just general fitness. I still love running, and I've started to kind of take a joy to lifting weights again. I got out of that for a while, and kind of leaning back into it now, and going to class. Some of my buddies, they've been trying it, so working with them a little bit. I'm hoping here in the next couple of months, maybe I do want to get into a grappling competition. I would like to see kind of where I stack up against, like a blue belt level. Just to see where I'm at, and win or lose, I want to know. So I don't want to. I want to make sure that I'm still keeping the pace of pushing myself against higher level competition, and not just doing whatever's easy. So I hope to get in a grappling competition here soon, and then whenever, as I'm sure Tyler's got a fight coming up. So whenever he gets finished with this fight, and next Primal Combat, we'll kind of see where we stand with the weight and go from there.
Yeah, definitely. It's gonna be a fun journey, no matter what. Anybody you want to shout out, give any thanks to before we wrap this up?
Oh yeah, if I sat here and thanked all of them, it'd be all day. Raleigh, Kara, Mom, Dad, Taylor, Sailor, Coach Tyler, Benny, everybody at Form 7, Bobby, AJ. Thank you all. Y'all have seen what we went through down there, and like we said before, these people, and you've got loved ones too. You surround yourself with them, and they are what keeps you going throughout the day. They're what you think of whenever things get hard. So, you know, I'm so grateful, especially the ones that sacrificed so much during my camp, because there was nobody making them come in to get that amount of reps with me or to do this much, being there for 2-3 hours at a time. You know, they're not getting paid to do that. So I am forever grateful for them to be able to go through that camp and that journey with them. So just having them people around me has been great.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to sit with me today. Congratulations on your first fight, submission of the night. Good luck going forward in whatever you decide to do, and especially if it's local with Primal Combat and Form 7, I'll be lurking around somewhere. You know, I don't know exactly how I may be involved, but I'm looking forward to it, and I think it's going to be a fun journey. So once again, thank you for taking the time. Congratulations and good luck. And thank you all for listening. If you haven't done so already, the podcast is available wherever you're listening. Hit the like button, subscribe, follow, share, all that good stuff. Find me on YouTube, same thing. Just trying to get these numbers up and have some fun. But I'll be back next week with more MMA talk with, I'm not going to tell you who I'm going to have next week, because I don't know yet. But I'll be back next week, and thank you for listening. Lucas, thank you again.
Thank you.